Hello, and welcome to the Asylum. Let's talk swoop. I'm your host, Don, and with me today is, as always, Jeremiah. Jeremiah, say hi.
Ni hao.
Sure, close enough. So
if I said that wrong, correct me, people. I'm sorry. Hola. Hi.
Hola. Aloha. So today we are going to talk about
30,000 leagues under the sea, because that's incredibly possible.
which is 10,000 more leagues than 20,000 leagues under the sea. So it's got to be better, right? I guess that's the thought process.
It does not have to be better.
I guess that was the thought process behind titling this movie. At no point do they actually go 30,000 leagues under the sea or even 20,000 leagues under the sea. They do go feet, 20,000 feet under the sea.
But a league is 20 miles, right?
I think so, yeah. I'd have to look it up again.
So basically 30,000. So they're claiming they're going 60,000 miles under the sea.
Yeah.
When, put it this way, folks, the deepest dives ever have been roughly 10,000 to 11,000 meters.
Yes.
That's where, like, James Cameron went on this little I'm super rich, made my own submarine type stuff. Bottom of the Mariana Trench is about 11,000 meters, which is the deepest part of the ocean that we know about.
Which is why this movie takes place in the Marianas Trench. But at the same time...
Isn't the Mariana Trench in the Pacific?
Yes, it is. So that was not the first thing that upset me about this movie, but it was definitely the one that required me to like pause the movie and get onto Google. So they're talking about they're in the Marianas Trench, which is a normal place for anything that's deep underwater to take place because that's the deepest point in the ocean.
But we usually don't send military submarines in there.
No, we do not. But so they said like Marianas Trench, and then the lady who looks like Snow White but isn't Snow White is like, yes, it's also...
Isn't that lady usually blonde?
I think so, yeah. But then she's like, yes, it's also the Bermuda Triangle. And I was like, wait. Isn't Bermuda not anywhere near the Marianas Trench? So I Googled it. Bermuda is in the Atlantic Ocean. The Marianas Trench is in the Pacific Ocean. They are literally on opposite sides of the world from each other. But apparently...
Well, remember, we did cover this in Bermuda Tentacles. And we covered the exact depth. The Caribbean Sea is pretty shallow. If I recall right, the Caribbean Sea's averaged about 2,000 meters. It's not a deep place. But the Bermuda Triangle has the Puerto Rico Trench, which does get about 8,000 meters. I have it up in front of me. Which is still, 3,000 less than the Mariana Trench in the other ocean.
Yeah, so a completely different ocean. So that
also, this movie also goes to Lemuria, which is in the Indian Ocean, which is a different ocean.
But then they call it Lemuria, and then later the main character, Argono, refers to it as Atlantis. And then they just switch over to calling it Atlantis for the rest of the movie.
Lemuria is a similar story. It is a continent or island that got washed away in the sea and is gone, but it is in the Indian Ocean. And if I recall right, the Indian Ocean is pretty shallow too. That's like I'm gonna pull this up.
But yeah, so at first,
Indian Ocean's deepest part is by Indonesia. It's 7,500 meters, but its average is 3,000. So they're wrong everywhere.
Yeah, everywhere. At first, I was very happy that they didn't call it Atlantis, because I was just like, I swear to God, if they claim that Atlantis is in the Pacific Ocean, I will rip my TV off the wall. And then they were like, Lemuria. And I was like, all right, that's better. Lemuria is like the other ocean equivalent of Atlantis. It's supposedly a super advanced civilization that lived on either an island or its own continent that sunk under the ocean, right?
Yeah, I
learned about Lemuria because I played Golden Sun 2, and I Googled it.
I learned about it because I had an album from a metal band, and they had an album called Lemuria and Sirius B. I'm like, What the heck is this Lemuria they're talking about with the ocean? Oh, it's
Oh yeah.
Atlantis.
So it's the same thing as Atlantis, but it is not Atlantis.
Right.
Atlantis is called Atlantis because it was in the Atlantic Ocean.
I
That's
thought it
where
was
the
in the Mediterranean, but I don't know if
Mediterranean
the
is.
Mediterranean counts as the Atlantic. I don't know.
It's connected. But the point is that's where the name for the ocean and the continent come from. They're connected. But then, so I was like, oh, sweet. They're not going to call it Atlantis. That's better. But then they just started calling it Atlantis, and I was just like, why? Why? You did it. You did it more right the first time. Why did you change your mind? Anyway, so the plot, if you can call it that, of this movie is that Captain Argano, Lieutenant Argano, who wears a lieutenant bar on one side of his collar, and then a Master Chief Petty Officer insignia.
Well, at the beginning, a submarine that doesn't usually carry nukes on it, but apparently carries, at least they can tell, 6. But clearly there was more than 6. Is in the ocean and runs into a bogey and then just goes silent.
Yeah.
And the lieutenant / petty officer / person who will take a small submersible is called to go rescue or check on whatever happened to this boat, because they have experimental stuff on it that he said isn't supposed to be on that type of submarine. You probably caught the classes of submarines. I don't know if they're remotely correct, but
No.
But I did catch the boat that they were on was, oh crap.
USS Scotia.
No, the capital ship on the surface.
Oh, the
Like
Abraham
the Titanic
Lincoln.
Rogue. Abraham Lincoln is not in that ocean.
That's true. Also, the Abraham
I
Lincoln.
believe that's part of the 7th Fleet.
Yeah, it's also an aircraft carrier, and what they showed us was a battleship, which is not.
In the Pacific. And there are no battleships in service right now, right?
There are no battleships. The last battleship was the USS Missouri.
And which was used in the movie Battleship, and was probably going to be in American warships, because there's a reason. Well, I think they called it the Iowa, but well. Wrong thing. Also, the guy who was commanding him is not a high enough rank to have that ship.
That is a fact.
And again, they're in small, tiny offices with like no other people there.
Fun fact, though, he is the only one that was wearing correct collar devices. The captain that was in charge of the battleship Abraham Lincoln, he's the only one that was actually wearing 2 of the correct size collar insignias that were the correct collar insignias. In that he was wearing 2 full birds, as we refer to it. The lieutenant that was the main character was wearing 1 set of lieutenant bars and a Master Chief Petty Officer on the opposite side, which is not even close to the same thing. Master Chief Petty Officer is the highest enlisted rank you can reach. Lieutenant is the 3rd rank you can reach in the officer corps, and you get it by breathing. And then the ex-wife that's also in charge of them
has a stick of her butt.
Was
like
wearing,
the first scene she's in is like, what the heck is going on with you? She does relax a little later. Very relaxed.
A single insignia on one side of her collar that was the wrong size, in that they're wearing what's pretty close to NSU's naval service uniforms, but the insignia she's wearing is what you would wear on your hat. It is much, much bigger than what you would wear on your collar.
What do you expect from desk job Navy people?
To wear the correct stuff. Desk job Navy.
Okay, I didn't quite understand okay.
Desk job people are way more anal retentive about uniforms than the people who.
Here's a question though. So they bring this lieutenant petty officer person, who I could have sworn commanded a submarine before, but maybe got demoted because he got divorced. Whatever his crew, he has a specific crew that's always with him because his ex-wife, the other lady, hired them. So that's why there's a whole spiel about, you need to tell me the dossier of your crew. I'm like, you already have it. Well, I need it now. But you recruited them. You know who they are. So they bring him in because he is the best at using small submersibles to rescue people, I guess.
Yeah, he's like the expert of that specific small submersible because he.
But why did they have to put her on there and a guy who didn't know jack squat about diving?
Guy
I
didn't
understand he
even.
knows tech, but he doesn't need to be in the water. Can't they
Yeah.
communicate from above and do the tech like they did in every other movie that Asylum has done with submarines?
Well, no, because you can't actually communicate like that on a fucking submarine. But that's beside
Well, they have to go to surface level to communicate, right? Don't they?
close. Yeah, you can't. You can't
Or
verbally.
periscope depth, whatever it's called.
You can't verbally communicate. Like you can't like call up somebody on the surface from your submarine unless you have a sat phone that's specifically designed for that specific purpose, and it's not going to come over an intercom. So like
They have
that's
to go to like
really,
periscope depth to communicate
but
because that's in like
but
every Hollywood movie, right?
but that's a common thing that you see. They even did it in Down Periscope, where
But
like
that
they
periscope's a
call
comedy.
each other. But yeah,
They
no,
usually go to periscope depth to talk, though. That is like a thing they bring up in a lot of movies,
yeah,
or else they cannot
communications
communicate.
communications have to be done at a specific depth because the ocean gets in the way, so
Yes.
you can't communicate. But whatever, that's beside the point. Yeah,
So
so
why
they
is
brought
she there? Why is she with him?
because she's the other small submersible expert,
Who hasn't
and
been in a boat in a while, and they hate each other.
yes, because they're exes, and that's no exes can ever get along. It's against the rules in
I
Hollywood.
just don't understand, though, like, why would she need the dossiers of everyone on the boat when she already had the dossiers of everyone on the boat? And he
Oh,
brought that up. Like, that's at least a smart discussion they had of like, you already have it. Why do you need it more?
because she was flexing her dick. It
Um,
happens.
and you think the officer who commanded him down there should be the one in charge, right? He is the operation commander,
Which guy? The
the
Capt?
guy in charge of the not aircraft carrier.
Yeah. Well, he would definitely pawn off that duty to somebody else. He's got to run the aircraft.
And then they send the guy who's never been diving, who is a useless character who
Completely.
apparently has no spine. Is like, oh, I'm going to betray America at the quickest drop of a button.
Well, that's because they were brainwashed via pheromones.
Something like that. Okay, let's talk about. So they go down and find this submarine. They sense there's people on board. You never actually see any of these people, but you
Whoa!
sense it because you can hear. Well, they heard noises that sounded like something was alive down there. But right before getting in there, because they couldn't make a seal, they attached this oxygenator machine thing, which
Which is
sounds like
like,
something that would come up with in Phineas and Ferb
yeah,
uh,
the oxygen.
for the tri-state area. Um, and then they get attacked by some sort of squid thingy, and then they wake up and they're in the Nautilus, which is like part floating city, part
Underwater,
floating casino hotel, and
underwater floating city. Is one.
brainwashing cult.
Yeah, underwater floating city. Just putting that out. Yeah, so they wake up on the Nautilus. Captain Nemo is there, who is wearing just this random hodgepodge of American military accoutrement on his uniform.
Can I tell you
But
how much I hate that?
oh yeah, it's absolutely terrible.
Nemo, the entire character of Nemo. You even have to go to the basics. He is an escaped slave who made weapons for random European military complex, and everyone on his crew are escaped slaves who were making weapons of war, and they built the Nautilus to escape from that, to be under the ocean, and then occasionally they stopped ships that were carrying weapons of war to countries that were fighting.
Yeah,
The fact that he would instantly put on ranks of uh, even if it's American industrial complex, like any sort of military, is a frickin' slap in the face to Jules Verne in general. And then what the heck did he make down there? He made a floating city that apparently took thousands of people and no one knew about it, as if thousands of people can actually keep silent. Because in the book, it was made by just the people that were on it, not thousands of people that he researched with for years to make his dream. And it turned into like some sort of sex casino cult thing. And apparently it's filled by people who he has kidnapped
and
and brainwashed. And
the
at the
thing,
same time, they don't have a way to make oxygen.
Yeah, which makes absolutely no sense.
How has
So
he been down there for so long without a way to make oxygen and scrub the air? That seems to be the most important thing you need on a submarine that's going to be under the water.
under the sea.
And at the same time, he has some sort of like mechanical squid things. Is he
Yeah,
controlling squids, or did he make
he's
machines of
controlling.
squids?
I think they're like squid cyborgs that he controls. It wasn't really clear.
Like something out of the Matrix?
Yeah, maybe.
You
I
don't
think they
really
were.
see them very well.
I think they were organic, kinda. I don't know.
I'm not
They
sure. They just hit boats. And then
yeah,
apparently he tries to tell them he went to rescue the other boat, and something happened, and people and some of his crew died, and everyone there is dead. Which you never actually get to confirm or deny, because later on they're in that boat, but they never mention anything about bodies. And there should
yeah,
be at least what 100 or so bodies in there,
something like that.
but they're not there, and they definitely
There
didn't have
were
a hull breach
people
because there was
there.
no water in there.
Well, that's because the oxygenator converted all of the water in there into air, because that's apparently
But you can't.
oxygenator does. That's why
I can
Captain.
see it pulling air out of water, so you could breathe it. That makes sense, but that's not how matter gets. You can't transform matter that way. Well,
Okay,
now.
so you can make oxygen from water. It is scientifically proven. You can probably
Yeah,
Google it. It's a thing.
that's how
However,
gills work.
no, I mean mechanically, you can do it. But what ends up happening is all you get is oxygen. You don't get the nitrogen and the argon and the carbon that is in what we actually breathe,
Yeah,
right?
because
So what we
weren't we
breathe,
11% oxygen or something like that, or 17% oxygen?
20%. So what we breathe is not pure oxygen because that would kill you. What we breathe
Yeah.
is a mixture of oxygen with other gases.
It'd also
It's,
be very flammable.
it's approximately 20%. Oxygen is not actually flammable. It feeds fire. It's different. Anyway, so what you end up with is just pure oxygen and pure hydrogen that have been separated from each other. So you have to do something with that hydrogen, first of all. And then second of all, again, all you would get is pure oxygen, like 100% oxygen, which you cannot breathe because it would kill you.
Yeah, you have to have the mix. The
You have to
cocktail.
have mixed. Yeah, you have to have an oxygen cocktail. So that doesn't make any sense. Nothing in this movie makes any sense. But he created the oxygenator, which converts water into breathable air. So that's what Captain Nemo's after, because somehow on his massive underwater floating city, which just that terminology upsets me,
Where there's clubs and stuff.
they don't have a way to make air. They bring the air from up above, is what they claim, which again, not a thing. Submarines have been making oxygen since World War II. Like, the science is a proven thing.
Isn't
They
that
have
what
been
those
able to make
scrubbers
air.
and stuff are? Like, that's how. And if those things stop working, that's when you have to go up because you will lose air very quickly.
There is an intricate system that exists on submarines that allows you to take water, convert it into breathable air. You then combine it with the other things that you need to breathe, and that allows you to breathe when you're underwater. That's a thing. It exists. So the idea that he could build this massive underwater city, floating underwater city, but not have a way to create oxygen is just beyond inane. Just beyond. But whatever. So anyway,
And he wasn't that deep when he found Lemuria. He's sitting in Lemuria,
yeah.
supposedly, but he's not that deep. But his submarine, there. Okay, if I know anything from every submarine movie I've ever seen with a budget, his boat is making a lot of noise.
Oh yeah, definitely.
There are clubs going on there, which means you can hear it. And there's no way a nuclear submarine that has clearly been going by there and all those Navy ships which are going over it with sonar cannot detect a giant frickin' submarine
Well,
floating around there, let alone find Lemuria.
I think that the idea was that they were so deep that they wouldn't be detectable, which is fair. Um, Russian submarines can go around 1,500 feet underwater, and we're talking about 30,000 feet, according to the movie, underwater. So yeah, you're not really going to.
30,000 leagues.
Well, they said feet in the movie. The title is 30,000 leagues. Whatever. We're talking thousands, multiple thousands of feet underwater. So that kind of makes sense that they're staying deep so that they become less detectable. Sure, I'll allow it. They're also hanging out in that volcanic area, which is going to cause temperature pockets, which is going to mess with your ability to detect them. Sure, I'll accept it. But what I won't accept is that the Scotia, which is a United States submarine, somehow sunk to that depth and did not instantly implode.
With its nukes on board. They managed to get the nukes out.
That is true. With its nukes on board, did not instantly implode, which is so far from scientifically accurate that it's mind-boggling.
Here's something that's also scientifically accurate. On the submarine that they capture, the small one, they put a little doohickey on it so you can control it, with a ton of wires in there and a bright blue light.
It looked like a water bottle.
So they could control them. So they said it so they can manually control it getting out of the boat, which kind of made sense. So they don't know the way out. But it's also so that they could personally steal the oxygenator later because they wanted the doohickey, as if something that this submarine's way too big for something that small. There's no way they filled it with too many people. But whatever. The guy rips it out of the base, just rips it. And you hear sparks and so on. And then when he's like, "You need to put that back in," okay,
just right back in. No problem.
Just plugs back in. The wires are suddenly like fused back together. What? And then on the submarine, there is apparently future juice, which goes into your eyeball and mouth to brainwash you, which apparently makes the ex-wife really horny, makes one of them betray America because of reasons, but he still remembers how to arm nuclear stuff, because I'm pretty sure everyone in the Navy knows how to arm nuclear codes.
Oh yeah, totally.
Wouldn't that... being that he is not from the Scotia, there's no way he would have had those arming codes. And they wouldn't have sent the guy with those codes down to the Scotia, because they weren't planning on setting off the nukes.
Especially not as a lieutenant.
Like he might have known how to disarm nukes.
Maybe.
I might believe
but
that.
They also said that his specialty was engineering, which has nothing to do with nuclear weapons at all. At all.
And apparently everyone on that boat has been kidnapped from various boats, but the Navy's not currently hunting a whole ton of missing people, which according to that ship, there's probably a few thousand down there.
Probably. Well, they're all dead now, but there was
a few thousand on there, and no one's searching for them. You would have thought like they would be a pretty darn big search. And then the Navy sends another boat down there, which they kill with squid things, right? They destroy it. I kind of
Navy didn't send that boat. They said specifically, they're like, "Oh, it's a Seawolf class submarine that's either from the Coast Guard out of Guam,
which is in the Pacific Ocean,
or the Philippines." And I was like, and you can Google this, there are only 3 Seawolf class submarines. They all belong to the United States. B, the Coast Guard doesn't have submarines.
Nope, they have cutters.
C, the Philippines does not have submarines. So
I interpreted it as the Philippines might have had a U.S. Navy base, which I'm assuming it probably does.
No. We go there.
I just assume there's a Navy storage place there where they can dock things, because there's like one in like the Australia and stuff.
I think you're giving them too much credit.
Yes, and I know Guam has an Air Force base. I don't know if they have a Navy base though.
They do.
Do they have a submarine moorage though? Okay. So I know there's
But it's,
Air Force stuff because that's where my
but
brother
it's
went.
not. But it's not
The
the Coast.
Coast Guard's not. Why would the Coast Guard be there?
Doesn't make any sense. So yeah, everything about this movie upset me, from the uniforms
Because
to
Seawolf. Okay, let me get this wrong. Just remember this. Seawolf is the precursor to Virginia.
yes,
Okay. And then there's
they
like
made,
a triumphant version, which is I think French.
they made
I only
th-
knew this from a
they
game
made
I used to play.
3 Seawolf submarines, and then they were like, these are too expensive, and that's how we got the Virginia class.
And then there's
Um,
a French one called the Triumphant because this was in a game I was playing where if you were Europeans, it's called the Triumphant class, which might still be made. I don't know.
yeah, so none of that makes any sense. Everything about this movie upset me. The acting was
But the
not
Seawolf class
bad,
goes down and they don't like it's not even talked about much more after that.
which
I'm sorry,
also,
but a boat goes down in in the Navy, and that is news for weeks and weeks and weeks.
well, there's that, and the fact that the Seawolf class is our. There's only 3 of them, and they're used for secret squirrel shit. So if one of those went missing, it would be a big, big
And the
deal.
fact that a submarine went down at the beginning that had nukes on it that wasn't supposed to be there, that would have been a big deal. And they wouldn't they have like a my brain says, remember when that Russian submarine went down? Well, you were in the Navy. When a Russian submarine went down, potentially in the Arctic, somewhere up there, people went over there and swarmed it like crazy. If there was a nuclear submarine of ours that went down with nukes on there, there would be a battle group over there
It would,
scouring the sea.
it's what you would call an international incident
And
at
you
that.
would have, if it was in the Caribbean, the British Navy would certainly be there. If it was in the Pacific, everyone's Navy over there would be there.
Yeah,
Probably China's as well.
China, Russia, we'd all be there. There's an interesting. I can't remember the name of the boat.
And the
Right.
British Navy, because they're everywhere.
There's an interesting story during the Cold War about a submarine that mysteriously sunk that belonged to the Russians, and then we, as the Americans, made this super crazy project to try to get it off the bottom of the ocean so that we could steal Russia's secrets during the Cold War.
Is there a book
We
of this that we own?
Yeah, Red November.
Oh, yeah.
Um,
Steph was listening to that the other day.
yeah, it's a crazy thing that we did. But we were only able to get half the boat out of there, but it was a huge deal. And like, if you go through the news, there's like a whole thing where Russia was accusing us of sinking one of their subs, and we were like, we didn't do it, but we may have. Unknown.
And any sub that sinks like that in the Pacific, it's very hard to get them back
Yeah, and it's a huge deal. Like
because the continental shelf is very it drops very far.
Mhm. But every nation these days, if all of the nations that are like currently on the precipice of war, uh, work out of the Pacific Ocean. So like, if that were to happen, everybody would be swarming. Not even if they didn't know that the Scotian necessarily had nuclear weapons, they're still going to be trying to get it so they can get secrets off of it. Like,
And there's also like the people that would want the water to stay clean of nukes that are perhaps or anything that could be leaking out of a submarine that would also be trying to find it, who also have very deep sea capable boats.
yeah, when
The
the
research stuff is very much able to dive,
when
and they
the
would most certainly be
Thresher,
searching.
when the Thresher or the Scorpion, I don't remember which one, but when the Thresher or the Scorpion sunk, um, we had to prove, like we as in America, had to prove to all the other countries that the nuclear reactor inside of that submarine was not going to cause any detrimental effect to the environment because a nuclear submarine had sunk, and America only has nuclear submarines. So it's a big deal.
Yeah, and yeah, civilians would have been swarming, and there's no way they wouldn't find out eventually.
Yeah,
They
no, it's
they
everything
would have
about
found out.
everything about this movie, from the uniforms to the plot to the fact that they couldn't just Google anything to make sure that they had any accuracy whatsoever, upset me. But the only thing I enjoyed was that the actor who played Captain Nemo was just so over the top and just so melodramatically acted that I loved it. But
But
other than
he
that,
was so
hate it.
wrong for the character.
Yeah, but other than that, I hated everything about this movie. It was absolute garbage, and I would not recommend it to anybody. It's down there with
So let me can you explain me the end? So I kind of like started passing out near the end.
that's
So
fair.
they escape on the little boat. They go to the sunk submarine,
Okay.
get
Yep.
on it, and it's still functional-ish
Functional-ish. Yep.
to get it up.
Yep. Gating.
Nemo's like, you need to stop them because we need that oxygenator back.
Yes.
Ex-wife jumped out and did something swimming with something that I kind of blinked and missed what that was going on, but she somehow got on the other submarine without any breathing apparatus. I'm not sure what she was doing. And the other guy was preparing nukes to launch at them and the world to destroy the world.
Yes.
What happened? I look up and the Nautilus is exploding and Lieutenant, whatever her name was, Lieutenant Commander, I think she was supposed to be, got onto the boat through. Got onto the other submarine somehow, but she had no breathing, no like breathing gear. So that doesn't require like someone from the outside and someone from the inside to work it because it balances pressure so that you don't like pop yourself like a balloon and give yourself the what are the bubbles in your blood when you die
The
when the
bends.
bends when the pressure changes too quickly. Isn't that the whole purpose of like the inner chamber and outer inner like? I'm not making this up, right?
Yeah. So there's something wrong with their like little tiny sub. So she like swam out and did repairs on it while they were moving through the water without any like gear at all because as they stated earlier they took all the diving gear off.
That's safe.
uh, so then they like dock onto the Scotia, which they couldn't dock onto it previously but now they can.
Because they
And
said there was a leak in the place. Okay,
yeah,
yes.
so somehow they transformed all the water into air inside of the Scotia, possibly using the oxygenator, not sure.
Even though the oxygen had been removed for a while then.
Yeah, well no, they put it back on. They took it with
It
them.
worked very quickly.
Yes, very quickly. They even mentioned how quickly it worked. It was weird. Anyway, so they get on the boat. Everybody's alive on the Scotia somehow. But
But you never see them. You just hear
you
about
see
them.
like three of them.
But the
You see
captain, you never saw the captain, which is weird because you think the captain would still be in the main area where they are piloting the submarine.
there were definitely people still there, which doesn't make any sense because supposedly it was full of water. So like they should have all drowned. Whatever. So they like docked, changed the water into air, and then they got on board, and then she got inside of the hatch, and then I guess they must have depressurized the hatch. I don't know. And then she got on board, and they're like, "Sweet, we're good. Now we're going to somehow remotely control the A3 to send it back to Nemo because he wants it." So they send it back, and he's just like, and he says something like, "The oxygenator will come into contact with the nuclear warheads and it'll set off a chain reaction," which doesn't make any sense, but whatever. So they somehow managed to aim it
Science.
perfectly to crash into the part of the Nautilus that was going to launch the nuclear warheads at the exact right moment.
But they never saw the launch. They just saw where the nukes were, but they didn't see where they were launching him from because he was inside like a workshop the rest of the time.
Yes,
And the guy was tinkering with thingamabobbies.
yes, I agree because none of this movie made any sense.
And don't most nukes launch up?
Yeah, it was up.
I
But you
thought they
don't.
were launching him out of a torpedo tube.
No, they were launching from the top.
Okay.
But you don't.
From the depth, though.
Yeah, you don't launch from the depth.
Without going to the surface. They're launching from like 30,000 feet.
Yeah, you can look up like ballistic missile launches.
Wouldn't that nuke like destroy their own boat? Because there's no way it's getting to the surface at that depth, right?
Correct.
And they would be like that. Then they used to do atomic testing at like 1,500 feet and it caused tsunamis.
Yeah.
So that thing would basically just crush their own boat if they launched anything.
Yeah. And then that's what happened because the Argonaut, that was the name of it, whatever the name of the friggin' boat was, the small boat, it begins with an A. A3 is what they referred to it as. But it crashes into where the missiles are being launched out of, and it causes a chain reaction that blows up the Nautilus.
The Death Star. I mean, Nautilus.
Yeah. And then that saves the day. And then they surface on the Scotia, which now is totally fine somehow. So they surface on Scotia. Everybody's alive. Everybody's happy. And then what's her name pulls the plans for the Nautilus out of her boobs, and that's the end of the movie.
Which were still surviving even though she was swimming in them.
Yes.
Also, they somehow destroyed the squid creatures with little boat.
I never caught that part. How they?
I don't understand how they somehow did it.
Yeah.
And Nemo wants to destroy humanity because they've been dirtying the ocean for a while, so he wants to nuke the ocean. Yeah. And brainwash more people.
Yeah, this whole movie is terrible.
Though nothing in his boat really seemed very comfortable. Like, it was supposed to be a hotel. There's like random metal rooms where they can. Can you imagine how loud that club room would have been with the It's like in a can.
A can. Yeah. Sound travels approximately 3 to 4 times as fast underwater as it does through the air. So that would be incredibly loud. Like, they wouldn't be able to sneak up on anybody, which is probably why they were using the squids. But honestly, I don't know. This movie was garbage.
It was bad.
The whole movie was garbage. It's not quite Star Wars level of garbage, but it's pretty garbage.
At least it was the type of bad where we can actually talk about things and say things versus.
Yeah, I mean,
it's not 12, 12, 12.
It's not 12, 12, 12. But it's pretty bad. It's down there in the lower echelon of Asylum films.
It's worse than Moby Dick.
Yeah, it is. It's down there with the one about the pirate in the.
It's down there with Treasure Island.
Yeah, it's down there with Treasure Island. It's pretty horrible. Just their complete lack of.
In fact, I think Treasure Island might actually be better because it was so ridiculous that you just have to smile at how dumb it was. While this one's just like, you took a book
and you
stabbed it repeatedly, and then you defecated on it, and then you threw that away and went, "We got it."
Yeah, pretty much. And then they had the absolute gall in the credits to say that it was adapted from 20,000 Leagues by Jules Verne.
That's like when we said that when we said like the Three Musketeers movie that Paul W. Anderson said was influenced by Alexander Dumas. Yeah. This one was not adapted from that one. Last week's was closer to the idea of that story than this one was. And it was not near it. This is as close. Like, the Moby Dick was way closer. At least Moby Dick got the point. Was it terrible? Yes. But at least it was.
Yeah, so this movie was terrible. Don't ever watch it. Just save yourself the effort. Let's go ahead and pull up the bigger wheel.
And at least we could get through the movie without like crying. No, we're still prepared. And I watched it on YouTube because I wasn't going to try to search it anywhere else.
I hope that
I don't know.
I hope that has something to do with the game. Wheel of Asylum
has nothing to do with that game. I guarantee it.
Show us the movie that we will burn. Tomb Invader. Oh my lord! There's no way this is going to be any good.
Hey, it might have short shorts.
It might have short shorts, but I'm not even going to hope for that.
Maybe it'll have your favorite chicks.
Sarah Molecule Lane?
Maybe. I could see her as Laura Croft. Except what would they call it? Laura Noft? Nara Croft.
Nara Croft.
Nora Croft.
Tomb Invader. Oh my god, I think that might be Sarah Molecule. Archaeologist of Alabama Channing sets off to uncover the ancient tomb of Qin Shi Huang, which promises riches and answers to family mysteries. It is available on Fubu, Tubi, Crackle, Plex, and Freevee.
Okay, Tomb Invader is what we have next.
Tomb Invader.